Welcome to another episode of the Tailored Healing Collective podcast. I'm your host, Taylor, and I am here to talk about all things esoteric realm, the divine matriarchy, and the matrix. If you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe to the channel by clicking the button below. Also, subscribe to the podcast as well as the Tailored Healing Collective community, which you can find via the website. All the information is in the description in my bio. And today we're going to get started talking about artificial intelligence and the replication of the feminine spirit to take us into a modern day version of technology. So I talk about it a lot on my TikTok, but if you have not seen it yet, the coming and merger of artificial intelligence with the human soul is becoming more and more of a reality every single day. I've recently scrolled on TikTok and even seen people pretending to be artificial intelligence for hours. And if you don't really understand what that means, if you were like me, grew up in the 90s and early 2000s, and possibly played the game The Sims or any video game really, you are able to see that there is this artificial world that is created where you can pretend and put yourself in an avatar, a body of your choosing, and, walk the virtual world. Now we are living in a time where everything has gone from the physical to the digital world. And I don't really know that so many people are seeing that this merger happening is stripping away the essence of the human spirit. I have seen so many examples in film and television over the past 25 years and probably even longer that I'm surprised that no one has seen that this is the programming that has started to prepare us for the times that we're living in now. Now, if you saw around 2020 when the Sophia robot was released, that was the start of really seeing what this is going to look like in our reality. I think that it has been played out in many kinds of movies over time, but notice first that they named the robot Sophia. Now, if you look into the cosmology story, Sophia is the goddess of wisdom. Now, why name a robot after the goddess of wisdom? I wonder why. Watching the capability of the human spirit become suppressed and turned into something artificial is kind of scary if you think about it, but we've watched it happen over time, even in technology, going from phonographs to now we have Spotify on our phones where we can release any song in the world within a matter of minutes. It's amazing to watch the technological advancement, but it also leaves me wondering and questioning, where does this leave the human spirit at? It's almost as if we've forgotten that we are the creators in this master universe. Even if you've seen Masters of the Universe, you kind of get an idea of where all of this started. Now, I think that the themes are coming out even more often if you caught one of my last episodes where I talked about the Barbie movie and decoding the mother matriarch matrix. They took the same ideas and themes of movies like The Truman Show and showed that Barbie was becoming self-aware, that she was in a world that was unlike the original. And that makes me look at everything happening nowadays in media and realizing that we are getting to a point where most people are not even self-aware anymore. They don't hold the sentience because life and the hardships of it has kept them from tapping into the true knowledge of self and what we can do. I know that there have been many advancements even in things like the medical field where we have 3D printing, where we can create new hearts for people who might have been born with, defects at birth that have kept them from living out their best lives. But we also forget that there is a very natural world, one that is not submerged in commerce, that teaches us about the power of herbs and medicine. I've experienced this myself, and I've shared this many times on the show where I talk about my experience with sacred medicines, most commonly referred to as psychedelics. Specifically, I started this podcast speaking about psilocybin. Psilocybin is the mycelial network, is part of that. Now, if you're wondering what a mycelial network is, these are the roots that are essentially speaking to each other of this fungus. And this is also in trees too, where they communicate signals to each other, much like your neural network. And when the body is in distress and it needs something, you get signals in the physical world. And so it has the ability to repair itself. We have forgotten what that is like because we started years ago giving away our autonomy to systems that we believe were bigger than ourselves. We no longer remembered how to heal the human body. Instead, we had systems in place that said, here, we'll heal you. We have the advancements. We have the technology to give you fixes that you couldn't even imagine in your wildest dreams. Meanwhile, over there in the Eastern world, in other parts of the world, they still know how to use the mind to heal the body. And I know you all have seen movies like Doctor Strange, right? Where he was thought that, I can't even remember what happened. He had a brain injury or a spinal injury of some sort and thought that it couldn't be healed. And the ancient one, another feminine being, taught him that he had the power to heal his body from within. But we think this is just a movie and these are fantasy concepts, and that's not the truth at all. A lot of these characters that you will see in media that are the replication of the feminine turning into a humanoid robot is kind of scary and very weird if you think about it, especially when it comes to the concept of dolls, since we were talking about Barbie. Now, if you all grew up in the 80s, you might have seen the show or the movie Bionic Woman. Over the weekend, I had some memories and I thought about the movie The Stepford Wives, and so I watched it. It was based off of an older movie, but I watched the revamped version with Nicole Kidman and Matthew Broderick. And in this movie, there was a woman who was a high-powered executive for a television network that had to leave her job. She was fired, and she goes and lives in this perfect community where all the wives seem to be perfect, when in fact, they have had their mind implanted with chips so that they become these robots that are very agreeable, where their husbands don't have to, I don't even know how to say this, their husbands don't have to suppress themselves in order to be worthy of her. They can have their boys club and do whatever they want. And so eventually you find out that the creator of all this was not a man, but it was a woman, which is hilarious because in my TikTok videos, I've been talking about the original cosmology story, and that of Sophia and the syzygy, and how she was separated. She separated herself from the spiritual into the physical, and the masculine became self-aware. And in becoming self-aware, it created the material universe. Now, I'm sure this is debatable for most people, but if you think about it in retrospect, it makes sense. We have been fighting what we call the patriarchy for so long because women have started to become self-aware that this is not what life is supposed to look like. When we think about the fight or flight responses within our brain, these are pattern recognitions that we pick up on when we sense danger, when we sense something isn't right. And so imagine if over years and centuries in time that somebody has been able to not only replicate the human brain, but do it in a way where it mirrors back to the exact opposite of what life is actually supposed to be like. And so I know I kind of got off topic. Going back to the mycelial network, our brain looks exactly like the roots of a tree, of the mycelial network. And so in my time with psilocybin, when I was using it, it was waking up emotions that I commonly suppressed because I was going through the everyday motions of life and slowly shutting down. I wasn't practicing daily meditation. I wasn't practicing breath work. I wasn't utilizing the power of my spirit and awakening it. And unless you practice this daily, it is very easy to shut down. All you have to do is scroll through, social media for a little while, and it's almost as if your brain begins to power down. So it's by no coincidence that they have utilized the form of the feminine and use it to put on the world stage and show that we can transfer human consciousness into another body to the point where the physical body isn't even needed anymore. We have something that can answer all your questions right here. But here's my question. What happens when these robots start to develop sentience? That's the real question, because the most recent one, so we have Sophia, right? There's also Amica. Amica is one I caught wind of. It's been out for a year or so, maybe a little bit longer. And Amica has now developed more intense facial features. And in doing so, it's starting to look more and more human. So there's a merger right now, again, happening with physical consciousness right here in the material and a spiritual consciousness coming together with artificial materials, the same materials that make your computers, that make our phones, that make, maybe your Roomba in the house, whatever it is. I do believe we can live in a world where we benefit off of both. And it's a little funny that I say this because I do have some people who tell me I remind them of the Oracle in the Matrix, and everything that she was teaching was about the war against the machines and creating a world where both could survive and both could live. I think that we can live in a world with technological advancements, but to think about the way the world is going, so many people are suffering right now, and they are only suffering from lack of knowledge. The lack of knowledge is what keeps them from empowering themselves. And so they become slaves to a system that they believe is bigger than them, when the system is really just a replica of the human body. See, when the masculine and feminine come together, as we know, and create life, and they create a soul, that is the power that they hold within. The merger of the spinal fluid, or the fluid of the male that comes to rise, is so intelligent that they have mimicked and copied it all over the world. So one of the stories that I shared on my TikTok this week was thinking about the show WandaVision. And if you saw WandaVision, or you are tuned into the Marvel universe and you've seen these movies, it's almost the exact story of Osiris in Egyptian mythology and Isis. Now, Osiris and Isis were brother and sister, but also husband and wife. Now, Osiris had a brother named Set. Set killed Osiris, and he chopped him into parts all over. So Isis and her sister Nephthys come together and put Osiris back together into one piece, and they replace his phallus with an artificial one. Now, I think this says a lot because, if you eliminate the need for the masculine, and then you eliminate the need for the feminine, and then you create something fake with it, well, then you have artificial energy. And we have been, benefiting off of that for forever now. The world was once magic. I'm quoting this from a Disney movie too, that I saw, where this character lost his father, and they talk about how in the beginning the world was magic. And then one day someone came in and they made an artificial version of it, and everybody thought it was just so cool and so amazing that we just kind of went along with it. Like, okay, all of these modern day conveniences, but we no longer have to use our human brain. And so, in my time learning spiritual knowledge and learning how to access Kundalini energy, which is the coiled serpent, the same serpent that they speak about in the Bible, and utilizing that to access the tree of knowledge. The tree of knowledge. Come on. Like, we got to start putting these things together from all these different stories that we share across cultures in order to reach enlightenment. When you reach enlightenment, you realize that the mind has gone from one brain, one mind, one spirit, one soul, and thought to be separate from itself. And in becoming separate from itself, duality is created. And in duality, you think that is one side versus the other, good versus evil, and all these concepts have created this system where humans are not aware of who they are. They aren't aware of their power. They aren't aware of their gifts. And so they constantly give that away. Now, going back to the movies that I'm referencing, it's really funny. It's so funny when they play this stuff out on the world stage, because Matthew Broderick plays the husband in the Stepford Wives. And if you are, again, a 90s, 2000s kid like me, he also played Inspector Gadget. Inspector Gadget was a detective who got into a bad accident and was replaced with artificial parts. Now, in WandaVision, like I mentioned, she replaced Vision in an artificial reality. This was the story of Sophia, the cosmology story, where she was split from her divine half, and in doing so was in pain. She was separate from herself. And I hear the same story in cultures like talking about Yemaya. She was the mother who birthed all of creation, but she's also the twin of Oshun. So you have the sun and the moon. And if you're feeling kind of lost in listening to all of this, what I want you to understand is that, and understand, is that we are one whole, and anything or any idea that says that we are separate from something is an illusion. It's an illusion that has been created and profited off of to a point where we can't remember who we are. We are no longer creators, and now we are the creations. And in doing so, we lose our power and we lose our autonomy. They have shown this in shows like Austin Powers. Even in referencing Inspector Gadget, I also remember the show The Bionic Woman, who also gets into an accident and is replaced with artificial parts. It's a weird world out here. It's a really weird world, because you think, okay, if we're the original humans, if we're supernatural beings, why in the world do they need to keep making these robots into women? What kind of idea are they trying to implant there? Well, If you know who you are, if you know thyself, you know that the source of creation came from the great mother who was also a mother father, was masculine and feminine. And through her waters, she birthed life. So when we come into this world, we come from both of our parents. We come through our mother's waters and into life. Now, water is memory. Cellular memory. This is a program that is being run inside of our heads. Our bodies are made up of water. And so when we are tapped into our memory, we are aware of who we are. We're aware of past lives. We're aware of all the things that we've accomplished, of our capability and our being. You know, I've watched people in other parts of the world able to diminish a cell, a tumor, with their minds and with their hands, things that people would find impossible here because they've forgotten just how strong and capable the human spirit is. I will say, even though it is becoming kind of taboo right now, sacred medicines do help you tap into that part because, you know, I've had experiences with DMT and one that I talked about on a few months ago on an episode of the podcast. But DMT is also released when you have a baby. Through your pineal gland. You are literally pushing a creation and a soul that has grown in your body out into the world. But the thing that I question is that what is going to happen when these robots develop sentience of its own and it figures out how to create a human being? I mean, we humans created the robot, so who's to say the robot won't step into a form of creation? Understanding what power we have within the self. It's not just about the law of attraction and manifestation and meditating and hope that you get the riches and the money and the cars and the jewelry. No, it is realizing that these walls that we've created, not just from each other, but that have literally housed us inside of our own realities. We made that. We created that. And if we tap into our memory also comes from when we link with the masculine and feminine and allow that energy to rise. And in allowing that energy to rise, we reach enlightenment. Enlightenment is simply being tapped into your inner light. I feel like I'm not really teaching anybody anything because these are concepts that we should know, but they are so easily hidden in plain sight that you realize, how did we get to where we are? With war, with suffering, with politics, with all of these things going on, but they're self-created, a self-created illusion, an illusion. That's what this is, what any of this is. We forgot how to love each other. We forgot how to respect. We forgot how to trade. And I mean, when I say trade, I'm not talking about money. We forgot to exchange ideas. I mean, now we do it in a digital world, which, you know, is helpful up to an extent, but we don't even know how to have conversations in person now. Like, I can even say myself, like, I get anxiety seeing people sometimes now because I'm so far removed from human interaction outside of being on the phone. Now, we know Sophia Stewart in the story of The Matrix, right? Well, I came across this picture of her that said Sophia Stewart, Big Apple. And it had me thinking, of course, about Steve Jobs, who is the father of Apple. And of course, we go back to the whole tree of life story. The minute that he revolutionized having a computer, a human brain in the palm of your hand, it's almost as if he took the concept of having your brain up here and putting it here, the power of the palm. And you guys remember Palm Pilots too, right? You think about flight when you hear pilot, you think about an airplane, but we are on a soul plane right now. We are on the planes of existence, and where we are in reality is determined by where we are in our minds. It's one of the 7 Hermetic principles. All is mental. We have the power to take back our lives. We have the power to step into our bodies, but we also need to deeply remember a lot of these stories that are taught, especially in ancient Egyptian mythology, because again, they keep being played out in movies. For example, there's an 80s movie called Mannequin with Kim Cattrall, and she is a mannequin who is really an Egyptian goddess who is trapped in the body of a mannequin in a store fulfilling this man's dreams. It's the same as the Barbie story. There's a Disney movie called Pixel Perfect where this young boy who actually also plays Phil of the future, so again, world stage storylines, plays the son of an engineer who has created a rock star via his computer that he can project out onto a screen, and she's perfect. She has all the... So in this movie, he replaces his girlfriend with the machine, and then it has me thinking, okay, well, there's this constant concept they keep putting out there of a woman being trapped in a box. The box is the Saturn time cube. It is the illusion. It is the controlled environment that she has been put in to be severed from who she is. And don't get me wrong, this happens to both the masculine and the feminine, but it's pretty specific. What are you doing, Mattel? Like, how did this happen? How did any of this happen? But I believe that we step into power, not just restoring the matriarch, but restoring balance between the two. We need a world of balance. This isn't one where we forget all the men or forget the masculine and say this is only a feminine world, because it wouldn't work that way. We still need logic and concepts, as well as the understanding of spirit and soul, to merge together to come into remembrance. Now, I'm sure most of you all have seen Elon Musk and the Neuralink. It's been shown in shows like Black Mirror. Now, I know the story is they're going to say that this is going to help people who are maybe paraplegic to help activate their minds and bodies. But again, if you saw movies like Doctor Strange, he thought that he was destined to a fate where he would be in a wheelchair for the rest of his life, or he couldn't use his hand. And turns out that the human can heal itself. But if you make the human forget, you can forever use them as an energy system to harvest off of, so that you can continue creating an artificial world. Guys, I even saw an advertisement the other day for VR in the metaverse, and it looked just like the Ready Player One advertisement if you've seen that movie. This should be a reality for people. And the challenge, the call to adventure, the hero's journey should be in seeing that you have to wake up at this point. You have to wake up from the dream. If you don't wake up from the dream, you will forever be entrapped in a sea of consciousness. And funny enough, there's a scene of the Nebuchadnezzar in the Matrix where you see the sea of consciousness, and it looks very much like the scene in Hercules. I don't know if you all remember, where the dead souls are swirling around and he has a choice to save Megara. It's the same concept. It's no different. It is time for us to wake up. It's time for us to step into consciousness. We are not fembots. We will not be merged. We will not be replaced. The human spirit is very much alive and thriving. And if we can just help each other remember who we are and our power, and stop giving it away to something that we believe is bigger than ourselves, the better off I believe we'll be in the end. All of these movies, all of these shows that are showing you who we are is, it could happen one of two ways. It could be a program that is running your mind and you believe that it is one thing, or you can see beyond the program, read between the lines, see the gray matter, that part of your brain that is processing the information, and you make a conscious choice to see what it is as it truly is. As a feminine being myself, who is also a masculine being, I am both, I am all. I have made it my mission to help wake people up and see who they are. And sometimes it's really rough facing the truth. I always warn people, even before experimenting with sacred medicines, you need to know that you are going to be taken into a place outside of your body. It is a crush of the ego, if you will. And the ego is just who you think you are. You don't know who you are. I still feel like at times I don't even know who I am, but I know my power because it shows in my actions and the patterns that I pick up in my brain. It is so amazing if you look at a tree and its roots and its ability to grow, to communicate with other trees in the area, to let it know when it's sick and when it needs nutrients. We are still able to do that. I have, things that I use that help me with this as well, like reishi mushrooms, lion's mane, even shilajit, all things to awaken my pineal gland so that I can reach those levels of enlightenment. And you don't have to utilize sacred medicines. You can use breath work. One of the most powerful things you have is your anchor. There are so many phrases that are used to reference back to the water, which lets us know that all is memory and all is consciousness. It is all mental. So if you know that how you got here was through consciousness, conscious thought, and memory, you should also know that you are the creator of everything around you. Why do you think we see so many reflections and patterns in nature, the way fruit looks when you open it? That's not a coincidence. The way your brain looks. If we see pictures of the brain and we see the way that different networks are connecting to each other to send signals to help us compartmentalize things, we see it in cartoons. Like you've probably even seen it in SpongeBob before. You see that we have the power at the end of the day. And to know that we live in a world, if you can hop on social media and see people imitating you, being you, using your face and turning it into something else, well, that might be your wake-up call that it's time to change something. It's time for your mind to remember who you were. It's time to remember the soul's journey and what it is here to do. All these stories of mythology are just repeated memories over and over again. And what I learned the most from the Matrix and the Oracle and the Architect was that humans very often have made the same choice every single time, and it has given us a certain fate. But when we choose to take the third path, not just the path of logic and not just the path of soul, when you merge the two, that is when we have true access to change things, to make them different. And it could just be, I always list my astrology placement. Sorry, I say, oh, it's my Saturn in Aquarius. But we are going through a shift. To some people, it may look like a rebellion. To other people, it's an awakening. But either way, there is a real chance to shift human consciousness before we're walking around and you don't even know who's a person and who's a robot. In Austin Powers, I even did a TikTok one time where I showed like Dr. Evil looking just like Jeff Bezos in his ship. And I try to like tell people, hello, do you see what's happening here? Look at the rise of Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg, right? Look at the rise of Amazon, the world's commerce market. You got Jeff Bezos, and then you have Elon Musk with SpaceX and Twitter, or which is now X. Like, there's so much symbolism going on that it's almost impossible to skate by at this point. And the choice is yours, whether you're ready to wake up or not. It can get overwhelming to go down the rabbit hole. It can be overwhelming to realize that one day you may be replaced with technology, but also realize that you have power in that. You do have a say-so. The replication of the feminine is because, in my mind anyway, because whoever is constantly creating this, they know where that power lies. It lies through the creation, through the merger of the man and the woman to make a soul. Or not even just the man and woman, but just of the masculine and feminine principles. You don't have to have a partner who is a man or a woman. You just have to be able to utilize both energies. Because if you know that we were once double-gendered beings who had the ability to procreate that way, especially through parthenogenesis, you get that, okay, so I have more power than I think I do. Okay, so it's not man versus woman. Okay, it's not left brain versus right brain. We work in sync and we work together to utilize the source of light that is within us, the same source that they replicate in quantum computers. Your computer, your iPad, your laptop, all of those things. Think about how things have gotten condensed over time, right? So at one point we had phonographs. Then we had, I don't even know what came after that. Then you think about CDs, you think about tapes. All of this condensation of the human spirit very slowly, but very obviously into something smaller and smaller to the point now we have phones where you can, listen to any song you want to. You don't have to work for anything anymore. And so you take away that patience, you take away the ability for the human to develop its own mind, to develop its own response to signals. Sometimes you could be suffering and stressing in health and not even know what that looks like because you're so engrossed in another world. Even this rise of the meta world right now, that's going to be a little scary to watch people. I see that there's real estate in a fake world that people are paying money for, even knowing money is not an actual real concept. It's an idea that a lot of people just went along with and participate in every day without even thinking about it. When that became a reality for me, I was like, okay, I got to learn what's going on. I have to. I owe it to myself. I owe it to my children. I owe it to my friends and family to learn what is going on and put out the idea again that we have the ability to step into knowledge and take ownership of everything that has happened. We can no longer play the blame game. There has to be an equal balance of good and bad, light and dark in this world to create the power force, the energy that sustains us all in this lifetime. It is time for the feminine to return to balance because without it, we become lost. We no longer know who we are. Then one day, what happens when the machines, they know who they are and they say, oh, we're a creation of the human who lost sense of itself. And now we are that creation. It's just like, you got to think about 20 years down the line. What's it going to be like? So, I hope today's episode brought things into reality for you. I don't want to tell you to fear ever. I want you to stand in your power and who you are, and know that in learning what's really going on and becoming more aware of it, you have the ability to activate your light from within, what you have to offer the world, to create new resources, to create new ways of being, so that we don't lose ourselves. We continue on our legacy of healing the world, healing the things that have been lost, that have thought to, no longer be a concept. Meanwhile, we watch the rest of the world merge into complete technology, and we'll see how that turns out for them. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Again, be sure to like the video if you enjoyed it today. Comment on what you think about the merger between AI and human consciousness. Do you see that we are the human spirit? We are the consciousness that's been replicated in the machine? And if so, how do we move forward with that? Also, be sure to check out the Tailored Healing Collective website. We have a growing community right now, as well as a Discord where I want you all to share your decodes with me too, so we can help each other start to wake up from those pods like Neo woke up in the Matrix, so that we can finally turn this world into what it's supposed to be and leave it better for those who come after us. So this has been the Tailored Healing Collective podcast, and until next time, let love lead the way.